Hello, my little book nerds. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jae, and guys, today I've got my best books of 2019. Gosh, it was a beautiful reading year, guys, and it was very hard to pare this list down, but I did it. I think I have 6 books to share with you. I think because I put something last minute, so I think it's 6. But first, let me just preface this entire list with saying that this was a phenomenal book year for me, mostly because it was the first real year that I really put some effort into reading. I've always loved reading, but after college, and I know that I've told this story a million times, but after college, I really didn't read that much. I was burnt out because I was a history major in college. I did a lot of academic reading, and I just didn't feel like reading was as pleasurable as I found it when I was in from elementary to high school. So I just let that part of my life kind of slip away. And that's not to say that I didn't read 1 to 3 books a year since then, but it was very sparse. And last year, 2019 alone, I read over 35 books. I looked on Goodreads, and I know I didn't even count all of the manga that I read, or just who knows what I left off that list, because I'm very bad at tracking, but I know it was over 35 books. And that was only in the latter half of the year. That was from maybe June to December. And for me, in terms of past reading sort of numbers, that's amazing. I've never done things like that. Also, I will go ahead and pay attention now to the shit show that is my reading room. I know I say it every time, and it will never change because this is me, guys. But let's get into my list. So the first book that I want to talk about that just made my year for so many reasons is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. Guys, it was the year of Maggie Stiefvater for me. I read Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater, and then I read The Scorpio Races, and I'm in the middle of listening to The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. And if I'm being honest, she is an excellent, just excellent writer, and I love her so much. But The Scorpio Races really changed something for me, just because at least in terms of last year and the reading that I did read a couple books that were set near the water, near the sea, and I really love that sort of setting. But The Scorpio Races is so heavily influenced by the setting of the ocean. It's just so beautiful to read, and I listened to it mostly on audiobook, and I absolutely enjoyed the voice actors. Whoever played Sean Kendrick in that book made my nether regions tingle, if I'm being honest. And you know what? The voice actors and the writing itself is not the only reason I really love this. I really loved how the horses in the book were portrayed. I know there are people out there who really love horses, and I love all animals, but horses have never been a big part in my life. And so to really read this book, it felt like I was reading sort of a love note to horses in a very sort of twisted fantasy way, because these horses are dangerous in the book. They could kill people, but they were still so beautiful, so majestic. And I feel like that sort of strange juxtaposition of something that is so widespread, that has so much widespread love, and then in this book is also universally feared in the town that Sean and Puck are from, the main characters. It's just so good. It's so good. And I forgot to mention what this book is about. Here we are. So basically, the Scorpio Races, they occur every November in the town of Thisbe, and our main protagonist, Puck Connolly, needs the money that the winners get to save her family home and her family. And so she enters with a normal horse, not a magical, dangerous horse. And she is up against some really seasoned riders in the race, specifically Sean Kendrick, who has an amazing, one of these magical horses. And they sort of get entangled with each other, and it is just a beautiful story that not only involves sort of indirect magic. There isn't a whole lot of super spell casty kind of magic. It's just sort of like indirect magic. The magic is the horses, but it does explore a lot of like familial relationships and just like being a young female trying to do the best for her family in the most unorthodox way. And it was 5 out of 5 stars to Maggie Stiefvater. So my second and third picks I'm gonna mash them together because they're by the same author and the same series. And those are Nevernight and God's Grave. Guys, if you want to talk about life-altering reads, here we are. The last time I said something like that, it was probably Harry Potter, if we're being real. This is just the most excellent book series. I am fangirl number one. Like so here's the funny thing about these books. In Nevernight, I really struggled with this book. At least in the first 100 pages, I didn't like the footnotes. I really didn't. And then the flashbacks were a little confusing. I followed them pretty easily, but the footnotes really just sort of contended with my experience. And then once it got to a certain point in the plot around the first 100 pages, right at the 100-page mark, things started to pick up, and then it was non-stop. Not that it was slow in the beginning, but the footnotes were very hard to digest in my eyes, and it made the plot sort of slow down. And guys, this is so good. And if you don't know what Nevernight is about, it is we have a protagonist named Mia who basically witnesses her family get murdered in front of her eyes by an opposing sort of political party in her world. And really it's just about her journey for revenge and trying to figure out her life after her family is murdered in front of her eyes. And the best thing about these books is that Mia, even though her main, point in life right now is revenge, to avenge her family, to bring to justice the people that wronged her, she's such a complex character. She's so much more than just revenge. And she herself in the story begins to find that out as well. So you sort of really feel like you're developing with her. And then I read God's Grave not too long after reading Nevernight, and guys, it about destroyed me. It destroyed me, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't read Dark Dawn yet. It's been months since I've read God's Grave, and I'm just too chicken to end the series. I love it so much. This was an emotional roller coaster, and I should mention too that if you're not into violence and gore, this may not be the book series for you, no matter how amazing it is. I have had friends that, read this series and are currently reading it, and they find the violence to be a little much. They're still reading and enjoying it, but I just will warn you that if that's not your thing, if blood and gore is not your thing, then this is going to be a difficult series to sort of get through. Otherwise, I love some blood and gore. I love some grossness, some violence, some badassery. So this is the book series for me. And God's Grave was just non-stop action and twists, plot twists. The last 100 pages of God's Grave just freaking blew my mind. I was crying, I was laughing, I was sad, I was happy, and I was confused, 100% confused. And I've held on to that up until now. And I probably will hold on to it until I finish Dark Dawn. But here we are. Those are my 2 and 3. My fourth pick for 2019 is Serpent and Dove. Guys, I don't know why I feel like I saw a lot of not hate, but definitely dislike for this book, Serpent and Dove. But I definitely let it sort of persuade me away from this book for a while. I didn't pick it up for a while, and I was looking for a new ebook or a new audiobook to listen to while I was going on my walks with my dogs and during my lunches, and I decided to download that because witches, guys, witches. I love witches. And you know what? It really freaking surprised me because I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. All these books on this list are 5 out of 5 stars, but Serpent and Dove was something that really surprised me because it did get so much dislike. And honestly, I am trash for enemies to lovers tropes. Like, give me an enemies to lovers story any day. And then you throw in witches, guys, completely for me. And you know what? I was also wary of the way it started because it is, I don't I don't know now that I'm thinking about it. I tried to look it up. I didn't see a lot of like articles on it, but there are French words in it, and I feel like it's set in sort of like an old world French setting, but I don't think the town of Césarine, the place that the book takes place in, exists. So confusing, but you know, it's a fantasy book, so whatever. But the main characters, Lou and Reed, the way they come together and then the way that they end up together is really, really wonderful. It's a really gripping tale in the way that, you know, I love some good old sexual tension, if I'm being honest. But Lou is a witch, and she is sort of like an underground, like sort of street rat type of witch. And you find out she's sort of been in hiding for a while, and the only way to keep herself safe is to become married to a chasseur, which is Reed, the other main character, is a chasseur, and he is by title a witch hunter. And this is very sort of like, I can see parallels between the Spanish Inquisition with Jews and this book with witches, and it is just set so well. And I think that's probably another reason why I really enjoyed it. Not only is it an enemies to lovers trope, and not only does it involve witches, my favorite ever, but it also reads very much like a historical fiction, like very much both fantasy and historical fiction, and I loved it so much. 100% recommend. My fifth book that I would like to talk about for my 2019 is The Rules of Magic. And if you've been following me on my reading journey for this last year, I haven't talked about The Rules of Magic all that much. I read The Rules of Magic before I started my booktube journey, and you know, it just touched my heart in so many ways. And there are some books that I just love so much that I can barely talk about with people, just because I don't know how to put it into words, how much I loved these books. Of course, here I am now with all these books that I love, and I'm putting it into words. I'm not succeeding very well, but here we are. But The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman is basically a prequel to Practical Magic. Now, I also read Practical Magic after The Rules of Magic, so you don't necessarily need to read Practical Magic before you read Rules of Magic. And honestly, I came to this series because I loved the movie with Sandra Bullock, Practical Magic. So I read The Rules of Magic, and it was phenomenal. Guys, I didn't know this until this past year, but I love books that explore family dynamics, family dysfunction, and especially relationships between mothers, daughters, and sisters. I have a sister. Growing up, you know, I didn't have the best relationship with my mother. We didn't quite understand each other. We're great now. I love my mother. I talk to her all the time. But, you know, it's just very interesting to see in prose form that other people struggle through this as well, and then they grow up and decide that love and family is really all that matters. And this is very much the tale in The Rules of Magic. There is a lot of trials and tribulations for the Owens family witches. And a lot of it is, you know, female relationship based, mother to daughter to sister, that sort of thing. And, you know, again, witches. I love witches. And this story was very interesting because the witch trope is very prevalent, but it isn't like as witchy as, it's not cliche witchy. You know, there's a lot of herb lore. They talk about like all these like soaps and potions and type things that they sort of make. And they're sort of like the unofficial like healer of their modern day town in Massachusetts. And it's in Massachusetts. Like what more could you want? But it basically follows the Owens family, Jet, Franny, and Vincent. They are siblings in the Owens family, and they sort of go through their lives trying to figure things out after their parents pass away, while their parents are still there, and how they deal with the Owens family magic in their everyday lives. And the way the magic system works there is very much sort of like things just happen. They're not there standing around casting spells, that sort of thing. It's very much a magic system that's motivated by life events and just family ties. And I love the lineage of the witches. It's just, I will always love that. I will always love the family history of witches. My last book that I want to talk about that I really enjoyed in 2019 is actually a manga, Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Guys, if you've been following my vlogs and whatever, Junji Ito has really become a main player in my book reading stage, guys. I love everything spooky. I love horror. I watch a lot of horror movies. I love reading horror. I don't have a lot of horror books because I'm such a big fantasy reader, but if anyone has recommendations, put them down below because I want to read more horror. I just sort of don't really know where to start other than your typical Stephen King. And Junji Ito just is so interesting because, of course, because it's a manga, it's Japanese horror, and I feel like Japanese culture and Japanese minds, when they're applied to horror, it's very interesting. It's very different from Western horror. I feel like they sort of really like to explore the baser motivations and natures of the human condition. And because they always seem to take that angle, their horror is just so much more terrifying and deep-seated and unsettling, at least to me. And that's very much how Junji Ito works. A lot of his images are very shocking. Like, you turn the page and there's like this big block of image, and it's very, very surprising, startling, unsettling. The first night that I read Uzumaki, when I was starting it, because it's a thick one, if you buy the omnibus, it's pretty thick, but it's actually, you can buy it in 3 parts too. I did not sleep that night. I didn't sleep that night, and I'm easily scared. I love horror, but I'm easily scared. But it's very rare these days that I lose sleep over something because it scared me, and Junji Ito did it. It scared the piss out of me, okay? And I couldn't necessarily tell you why. Like, it wasn't like I was watching a horror movie and there were jump scares. It was mostly that his images were so unsettling and the story is so strange and out there that you have no choice but to be scared. So Uzumaki is about a town that is haunted by spirals. And I know that must sound very strange because spirals themselves as an inanimate thing is nothing. Like, there's nothing scary about spiral shapes, right? Well, you're wrong. Read this manga and you will forever be changed on that opinion. So the house, or the town, is haunted by spirals. Like, the citizens are slowly starting to become more and more obsessed with spirals, and things just are happening. There's a weird time warp moment where people can't get out, and there are parts where like people turn into snails because the shells are spirals. And then there's like a weird, like, slightly cannibalistic moment. It's very, yeah, it's good. It's really good. And if you're into unsettling and if you're into horror, you gotta read it. And even if you're not, if you don't scare that easily, I would suggest you still read anything by Junji Ito because his storytelling skills are so excellent. It's unparalleled the way his stories really stay with you. So I would highly recommend Uzumaki or anything by Junji Ito. I have not read a single bad thing by him yet. So 5 out of 5 stars to basically everything that Junji Ito's ever written. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this list. That's it for me for 2019. Those are my top books. And if you would like to share your top books, I would love to see them and read about them and read them. Put it down in the comments below. And guys, let me tell you that I am so grateful for you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you always know when I've got good things coming to you. Bye, y'all.